This is America's most famous admiral.
You know, it's such an important issue for our youth and adults. As you said, some of these laws are actually extending into adulthood. You know, we often say that gender-affirming care is health care, gender-affirming care is mental health care, and gender-affirming care is literally suicide prevention care. Would that be your view as well?
I 100% agree.
It's genuinely, I want to actually genuinely give my heartfelt condolences to any young person who falls for this crap, because you're going to be so miserable for the rest of your life. If you chop off your genitals, take a whole bunch of chemicals as a teenager, you are going to be miserable for the rest of your life.
Yes.
You're never going to be the person you want to be. You're never going to be accepted as that person. You're never going to feel happy inside. If you fall for this, I genuinely feel sorry for you. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The second thing I'm going to say, I find it very interesting that the only surgery we call affirming is gender surgery. Now imagine a girl woke up and said, I was born in the wrong body because my tits are small. I'm a big-titted woman, but I was born in the wrong body. I need tit affirming care. I need to affirm my true body shape, because otherwise I have a mental health problem. No, it's plastic. It looks good, perhaps, whatever. But we would never say she was born in the wrong body and we had to affirm her genuine body experience.
Her triple Ds.
Yeah, her triple Ds had to be affirmed. It's garbage. You're not affirming anything. And also, I think it's kind of interesting. They say that trans people commit suicide at a higher rate. That's sad. Nobody should kill themselves. I would hate for anybody to kill themselves. They say that's because they're picked on for being trans. I don't know why anyone's ever had the argument that perhaps they have a mental instability before this trans stuff, and that's why they're more prone to suicide in the first place.
Seems like an obvious explanation.
Seems like an obvious explanation. I don't think it's normal for anybody to want to mutilate themselves. I think if someone were to come to me and say, I really want to cut my hand off, I would think they had a mental illness. Why? Don't like it. You don't like it. I don't like my hand. I don't want it. I would think that's very concerning. So I really, truly feel sorry for any young people who fall for this. I don't blame them. I think it's a massive psyop. And I think if you fall for it, you're going to be miserable forever. And one more point I'll make on this whole thing I found very interesting. I'm a professional fighter, so I spent a lot of time in Thailand when I was fighting. Kickboxing's big over there. And I've always thought, no one's ever mentioned that Thailand has a bunch of ladyboys, right? But if you say to a ladyboy, are you a man or a woman? She goes, I'm a ladyboy. What's that? I'm a man, but I'm a ladyboy. They don't see themselves as women in the real sense of I am female. Right. They don't want to compete against women in sports. They don't want to pretend they can have kids. They don't talk about having periods. They're like, oh, I'm a ladyboy. It's like kind of like an in-between. It's got its own thing.
India has the same.
Yeah, it's fine. Nobody over there is genuinely arguing that they are actually female. Only in America are we doing that. And that's what's the craziest thing of all. Even if you truly, truly believe you need to change gender, and you truly believe it's the right path for you, and you believe you're not being psyoped, and you believe you're going to be happy, and you believe you need to mutilate yourself, that's all fine. But then to come along with the hubris and arrogance to tell me that I have to pretend you're something you're not,
yes,
biologically.
That's right.
That's absolutely not really arrogant. You can't tell me what I have to call you, right? I'm allowed to come to my own conclusions and opinions. And the whole point of being a human is that we've gone through life long enough to identify patterns. The scariest thing about all this stuff is that the world is still polarized to a degree, because there's certain places in the world which are too close to baseline reality for survival, for any of this garbage to fly. You think you can go to Tajikistan, where people are trying to eat, and talk to them about gender and all this garbage? They'll be like, listen, you're a man, this needs doing, shut up, right? There's no time for any of that. So as the Western world is self-destructing in real time, there are places in the world where none of this crap is happening. So who's going to own the world in 100, 200 years? Like, it's still competitive to a degree. It's still bipolar. There's two sides to the world. I think that when men are men and women are women, and we stop arguing about dumb shit, that society overall is more competitive. I don't know how America's going to maintain its influence over the entire planet when it's doing all this garbage. How long can this possibly last?
Not long.
Not long. It's like the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome, everything became decadent, endless sex and orgies. No one had enough faith in the state to join the army anymore. And people talk about barbarians destroying Rome. Rome was destroyed from the inside. That's what happens. And we're witnessing it in real time. And we have all these problems on Earth, and then they want to spend millions and millions of dollars on an investigation to prove that I'm a human trafficker for TikTok. It's clown world. Nothing even makes sense anymore.
This is a video from a recent Pride March in New York, and I'm interested in your view of it.
So I have a few points on this. The first point is that it is an unfortunate reality, and I'm not going to be called a bigot. I'm going to talk about the reality that the homosexual community cannot reproduce in and of themselves. So for them to have a community into the future, they do need your children. That's how they think. For there to be a homosexual community in 100 years from now, they need straight people's kids, because only straight people have children. So they're telling the truth. That's the first thing. They mean what they say. The second thing is, I think a lot of this is an attention grab by them. I think they are slightly disappointed in how tolerant many people actually are. I have no problem with gay people. I don't care. I'm gay. Cool. I want to get married. Fine. I'm going to wave my in your kid's face. Wait a second.
Yeah.
They push it to a point where we have to react. And then when we react, they say we're bigoted. Children are innocent, and destruction of innocence is one of the most disgusting things on the face of the planet. It's terrible if a child is killed in a war. It's terrible if a child's mind is warped by any propaganda mechanism. They're innocent. And I think that the whole point of having children as a whole is to instill them with your worldview. I know if I have children, I want them to be like me. We just talked about my last name and how I want them to honor me into post-death. Then I want them to be a representation of me, which means they should believe in my values and my creeds. Why is a group of people in New York walking around telling me what they're going to teach my kids and what my kids should believe? They're not your kids, they're my kids.
Right.
And that's what's so scary, because children are impressionable, and children are raised by the state and the internet, effectively, which is why they want me off the internet. But they'll let a lot of people stay on the internet that say a lot of things. I'll argue that if I was transgender, the American embassy would have told Romania they were bigoted and removed me pretty quickly. I would genuinely argue that point. They would say, no, what you're doing is abusive to the LGBT community. He must be removed from jail.
Of course, immediately.
Immediately. But because I'm straight and heterosexual, it doesn't matter. I'm obviously a Muslim. I'm Islamic. What most people don't understand about a lot of the Islamic world is that a lot of these things are outlawed, right? But people say, so gay people can't go there. If you go to Dubai, you will see gay people. If a guy wants to be gay and do whatever he wants to do with a full-grown man in his own house, I don't care. And you can tell. You might have a waiter's gay, whatever, etc. The only reason it's outlawed is not to stop a man, full-grown man, meeting a full-grown man and doing what he decides to do. It's outlawed to prevent it bleeding into society and affecting the culture where the children are affected. That's why it's outlawed. And I'm not saying it should be outlawed in America, but what I'm saying is, if you're not going to protect the innocence of children from any ideology, and if the ideology is deliberately targeting children because children are more impressionable and more capable of believing in things which simply aren't true, perhaps a man looking like a woman or vice versa, then that is a dangerous ideology that should be very closely examined. So that's garbage to begin with. But I think, genuinely, to go back to that point, any ideology which is waking up and saying, our worldview is so extreme, the only way we can truly ensure it exists into the future is to find the most susceptible people on the planet to program and attack their minds, children. I think that's a destructive ideology and should be very closely looked at. And it doesn't matter if it's LGBTQ or anything else. I think if you sit children down and pump propaganda into their brain, and that's the only way you can get what you want, then there's probably something wrong with your ideas, because you're afraid to challenge them with a grown adult. You don't want a fair fight. You understand? They don't want a fair fight. They want to sit with a child who has no idea what he's talking about and tell him that men are women and women are men and vice versa, and just completely confuse the poor child because they don't want a fair fight against a rational adult. And that's scary. And it's also kind of funny that like this whole LGBTQ thing is also linked to the patriarchy, also linked to all this other garbage and all these other false narratives and false ideas. And it's these people who are attacking me saying I'm dangerous for women because I'm a misogynist. You're dangerous for women for pretending men are women. You're more dangerous for women than I am. I'm saying a man's a man's, a woman's a woman. You're saying that if I put a wig on, I could go punch women in the face in the boxing ring. Who's dangerous for women? It's insanity. And again, they have no virtue at all. They just weaponize garbage and attack you with it. But I do think that children have to at least be the bottom line for society. That's the future. And if you have children at home, you're raising them. And if you struggle to feed them, the government doesn't care. They are yours, and they're your problem and your responsibility. And you deal with all of the stress and all the worry of them being out late at night and all the responsibility of taking care of them. And you went through hell for them to exist. You don't owe their minds to anybody else. You don't owe it. So there has to be a point where you stand up and say, no, I raised this child.
It's my child.
That's my child. It's not yours. Absolutely.